Hello and welcome to the Gameweek 36 edition of the FPL Scope podcast. I am one of your hosts, Mathias, and with me today I have only one co-host, and that is Kevin, who has his hoodie up, and he has his thumbs up, and he has his microphone up. Most things are pointing up for Kevin, so how are you doing, Kevin?
About to make a joke about my but anyways, everything is good. Can't complain. It's been a crazy week at work, but I think the most important thing is that Everton won against Brighton in a remarkable fashion, to the point that if you actually compare Anthony Gordon's lifetime Premier League record with Dwight McNeil's current Premier League season, it's exactly the same. So I'm very happy.
That's a fair point. Anthony Gordon is one of the guys we potentially might talk about because it's all about Newcastle and tripling up. So are you bringing in Anthony Gordon, or is he just not the player for you?
Oh, he's not in my plans whatsoever. I think it's a bit sad, because obviously, regardless of how things worked out at Everton, I would like to see him play well. But am I a bit, as we say in Swedish, skadeglad? Maybe a little. Maybe a little, but we all know that at the end of the day, Gordon made the right pick going to Newcastle as they're trying to get Champions League football.
We'll see. He doesn't really play much for them, and I think he's going to be. If the reports about Neymar coming in, I don't think he's going to be playing that much going forward either. But we'll see. Even Isak has been amazing as a left winger, even when he doesn't play as a striker. But yeah, we'll talk a lot about Isak and Wilson for sure. But at first, we're going to talk about Game Week 35, which was not as Newcastle heavy because Newcastle played Arsenal and lost 2-0. Didn't score a single goal, and as you can see, you have 3 Newcastle players, and they got a whopping 4 points in total. The rest of your team didn't really do much better, but that was sort of the week for everyone. It was a huge struggle for all the template picks, apart from a couple key ingredients. You have Salah with 10 points, and you also had McAllister at 8 points, so you got some nice fortune there as well. McAllister with 8 points, even though Everton won 5-1 against Brighton, which was pretty good for you, apart from the fact that you have Stepinian as well and Mitoma benched. But you can take us through your team as well, and you made no transfers. So are there any transfers you wish you would have done, or are you happy with just standing pat and having 2 transfers to go in Game Week 36?
Yeah, I mean, I told you that I wanted a triple captain Totti, so I'm very disappointed that I wasn't able to bring him in for easy transfer of Bachmann out. But you told me to stand pat, and I
Sure.
took your advice. But other than that, I am, of course, annoyed about Matoma because you saw my team that Watkins was always the one who was benched. But considering the matchup and everything like that, I just figured this would be the match where Watkins would give me some returns, considering the fact that he is their pen taker. His I knew that his wife was pregnant or girlfriend was pregnant, and I was just like, oh, it's gonna be the classic, all these sort of celebrations and all this type of stuff. And in the end, he elbowed a guy and got a yellow card or whatever the hell he did to get a yellow. I didn't really pay attention to what he did. I just was disappointed with everything he did on the pitch. So, all things considered, 35 points, I'm happy, I guess, because everyone else got roughly the same. So, whatever.
Yeah, you ended up with more points than both Kimo and I. So, as has been the case for most of the season, you've gotten just a little bit of an edge pretty much every game week, and that's why you're
Mm.
ahead of both of us in the standings. But yeah, like you said, Watkins. I just want to get your thoughts again on him because you've had him for 3 game weeks now, and he's blanked in every single one after having like 10 or 12 game weeks in a row almost where he scored. So are you looking to sell him, or are you just gonna keep the faith with him, or what do you think about Watkins in general?
It's difficult, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm having to always bench a midfielder or having to bench someone for the third striker spot. He has been pretty dog shit. But that being said, he is going to be playing Spurs, I believe, and that matchup has had goals in the past. His kid has now been born. If there's any time for him to score, now would be the time to do the celebration. But unfortunately, I think the better idea, I guess, is to look to either get Wilson in, or potentially seeing what else is out there. If maybe put a punt on Wout Weghorst. I don't know. I'm just kidding. But I think right now, most likely, I'm going to sell him to get Callum Wilson.
Yeah, then you'd have to sell one of your other Newcastle players as well. But we'll get into that more later on because we're going to talk about our future plans. But first, we're going to go through all of our scores as well. Chemo's as well, Gaming 35. 33 points. He also would have had 35 points if he had just played the right goalkeeper. I don't know why he didn't play Everson and got his 0 points rather than a -2 for steal. It's a huge question mark for me. Like, such an obvious pick, Everson over Steele. But but apart from that, he had an okay game week. He didn't have a McAllister. He does have Trent Alexander-Arnold, however, and neither of us do. And I'm quite jealous about that. He doesn't have De Bruyne, but De Bruyne has been pretty terrible for both of us since we brought him in. So he had Grealish on the bench because he knew Grealish wasn't going to start. And he also brought in Alvarez because there was some pretty strong indications that Alvarez was going to start. But Alvarez also blanked, so we basically just did a transfer for nothing because he's probably going to sell Alvarez now as well. So yeah, what do you think about his punt with Alvarez? You were thinking along the same lines as well. You could have gone with Watkins to Alvarez as well. So why did you not do that move? And what do you think about Chemo doing the Jota to Alvarez move himself?
I think I think it was fine to get rid of Jota simply because there was so much uncertainty around his injury. But I think the reason I didn't do the Alvarez move was just to stand pat in case I wanted to get double new, I say double Newcastle as if I don't have triple Newcastle players, but what I meant to say was double Newcastle strikers, and the fact that we'd get a clear indication of what would happen. Is it Wilson or is it Isak who will be playing? And we got the actual thing, which was Isak played on the left and was brilliant, and Wilson got to play, didn't really do much, and yeah, they get to both play. So I think it's fine having one or the other. Personally, I still think Isak will be the guy on penalties and all this type of stuff. So when push comes to shove, I think Isak is, the big honcho at the club, especially how they push him out on social media and all this type of stuff too. So yeah, personally, my armband will go on Isak between the two. But yeah, I think standing pat gave me the option of fixing some minor issues. And I do have issues because I don't like my goalkeeper core. I don't like my defense. I don't like my mid. Nah, I like my midfield. I like my strikers for the most part. But that's the main reason why I didn't jump the Alvarez ship. I probably will jump on the Alvarez ship eventually because kid's not getting to play against Real Madrid either, and he's one of the most composed strikers in the world. So yeah, I definitely think bringing Alvarez in isn't a bad idea, but I think with everything that's coming up with the double game week, yeah, it seems like a bit of a risk. He could have exploded, to be fair. I knew Gundogan was due a game because he does this always towards the end of the season where he just randomly comes up with the brace, as he did against Aston Villa just a year ago. So yeah, I think personally, I might look into maybe bringing in Gundogan or Mars as well. We spoke about Mars earlier in the podcast as well, and just privately. And yeah, there's just a lot of fun, exciting players. It's just a question of whether you want to go differential or stick template and have Rashford getting 2 points every damn week at this point.
Yeah, and that is actually a nice segue into the manager of the week, which is Nils Hauf, which is one of my friends, one of my personal friends. And as you can see, he does not have Rashford. He does not have a single Man United player in general. He hasn't had a single Man United player the whole season. I actually checked, or at least from what I checked, like I searched up like the most important Man United players like Rashford, Shaw, Fernandes. None of those guys were in his team or transfer history at all. But that's because he is a Liverpool fan, and that served him well this week because he actually had Salah as captain. He went with Salah rather than Haaland and reaped the rewards from that. And now he has 48 points from this game week. He went up in the standings. I think he's like 400k in total. So pretty good week for him. But I do have to say one issue that I have, and that is his transfers. It is abysmal transfers. Selling 2 West Ham players and then bringing in Everson and Chilwell. That's no good, Nils. I know you're probably watching now, and yeah, I don't rate that at all. Selling 2 West Ham players and then bringing in Chilwell. I gotta have some like jokes aside. I'm a West Ham fan, of course, so that's why I don't like you selling West Ham players. But Chilwell in is kind of a question mark, and especially now that he got injured, it's looking even worse. But I don't know. It still ended up with 48 points, so decent game week because of the Salah captaincy. But what do you think of this team in general? It's slightly different. I think Nils, I think he, yeah, as you can see on the bottom right there, he did the wildcard in Gameweek 33, did the bench boosting in Gameweek 34. So that's sort of why this team is kind of different than the most, because he wildcarded at a later point than most people did. But what do you think about this team in general, and what do you think it lacks?
I mean, I think generally speaking, it's a very good team. I see the sort of planning and the reasoning behind a lot of the decisions he's made. He's got the triple Brighton, he's got the triple Newcastle, which is awesome because that's just double game week player after double game week player. I have to criticize the Chilwell move. We did a whole thing about why it's risky. I remember you saying like there is upside to Chilwell, which is fair enough. There is a lot of upside now that Reece James is out, but Chelsea have been terrible. I mean, yes, they finally managed to beat Bournemouth, as my brother would be very stoked about. But I think, generally speaking, it's, I mean, last week isn't a good example of it, but like a Man United player would have been a decent shout, like Luke Shaw, for example, or pretty much anyone in that same price bracket as Chilwell. And I think that's the issue, right? I think the Chilwell move was a mistake because I advised people to get away from him. And yes, I guess I was proven right in some misfortune in the sense of a player getting injured. Obviously, that's not a nice way to be proven right. But at the same time, I think Chelsea defensively are just so shaky that it is such a sideways move to bring in Chilwell.
Yeah, I mean, Chilwell does have a double game week coming up in Game Week 37, but it's against City and United away, I think. So
Yeah.
it's not the most lucrative double as well. Personally, I sold Chilwell from my own team. I did bring in Stones, who didn't play, so didn't really help me at all. But yeah, when it comes to my own team, you're going to see that video tomorrow, uploading the team selection video for myself. And I'm pretty unsure about what I'm going to do with my transfers as well, but we'll get into that more later. Also, just another note on Nils' team. It's he has also the misfortune of having Ederson in goal, which keeps turning into 2 pointers for Ederson, and it happened again. And I know Ederson owners are so unhappy about him. But what do you think about Ederson in general as well? Would you? Obviously, we haven't had him personally, so we don't feel the pain and we don't have the baggage from having him earlier in the season. But just looking at it from as a third party, as someone who didn't have him, would you keep him now for the end of the season, or would you just be like, I'm sick and tired of Ederson, I'm just going to get rid of him and get some other third City option? Because I think that's sort of the plus side with not having Ederson, is potentially having three good City players instead of having the goalkeeper who gets 2 points mostly and sometimes gets 6 points. So what do you think
Yeah,
about Ederson?
absolutely. I personally think the reason, for example, why you have Stones is the fact that he has attacking returns in him. I think the the miss with Ederson is the fact that you only can rely on clean sheets because even saves he doesn't get normally enough. I've rolled with Arisa Balaga, but he on average gets me 3 points every time, even though he concedes, which is perfectly fine, I guess, in that regards. But I think when you're spending what is Ederson's price? It is over 6 mil, right?
Nah, it's 5.4. It's pretty
Oh,
still
okay.
pretty
So
cheap.
it's not over six. Okay, well that's good. Yeah, but there's still better options. Like for example, if Ederson was Allison instead, he would be laughing and all this type of stuff. So personally, that's the sort of move I would have done instead. And yeah, I think Ederson, unfortunately, he's playing Everton away next. That can go either way. Either we'll get absolutely hammered or we'll get hammered but still score, which is most likely what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Then he's got Chelsea at home. Chelsea at home can go either way. It can either be an absolute trashing or Chelsea will play some bullshit KG match and somehow get lucky and still score. Then he's got Brighton away. Brighton, who have just been absolutely dominated by Everton, which I know De Serbi is gonna unleash, full hell on both Arsenal and City. And then Brentford away. Tony absolutely destroyed City in the reverse fixture. Brentford are good at home. I personally don't think that Ederson's the right play, even though he has a double game week.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair enough. For me, it's more interesting to get like you could get Stones like I did. I think he's also a decent option, assuming he plays, because he's going to play against Real Madrid in the Champions League. So maybe they'll rest him again in the league. I don't know. But there's also other defenders that have potential attacking returns, Ake and Akanji among them. And then you also have people like, well, Grealish, who's in this team already, or you can have someone like Mars as well, on top of Grealish, or potentially Foden. I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see City's lineup in the league now that they are playing like a set 11 against Real Madrid. They played the same 11 guys for 90 minutes against Real Madrid
100%.
yesterday. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. But yeah, we'll get more into Nils' upcoming plans as well. But I think our one criticism for him is the transfers. And yeah, he sold Fabianski for Iversen, fair enough. He got some money from that, but spending it upgrading Kufal to Chilwell, when I think going Chilwell to Kufal might be like a good move, or Chilwell to like someone cheap might be the move to do next game week. It's sort of a waste, but in the end, manager of the week, 48 points. He did a great game week, mostly because of his Liverpool players, and that's what I think he's going to do going forward as well, trying to get that third Liverpool player in as well, just to have like a nice celebration. Potentially Firmino as well, who's ending his Liverpool career pretty soon. But yeah, we'll get into his plans at the end of the podcast. But before we do that, we're going to do some other stuff. And the first thing we do is looking at the fixture ticker for the remaining 3 game weeks that we have in FPL. And as you can see from the fixture ticker, we have Newcastle near the top of the lists, but Man United are actually top because they have even easier matches. They don't have the Chelsea away fixture, which I guess isn't that tough of a match for Newcastle, but still, Man United have amazing fixtures, and that's not going to be like anything in consideration for Nils because he doesn't use Man United players apparently. But I still think Man United have a lot of value in them, and especially if you look at their expected goals, they should be scoring a lot more than they have been lately. It's kind of interesting looking at their numbers. Like, they should be a high-scoring team that concede a lot of goals, but lately they've been like a low-scoring team, conceding not that many goals. But yeah, I think it's a bit interesting. But there's also, obviously, we're going to talk more about Newcastle and Brighton players. We're going to have make the case with the captaincy options from Newcastle and Brighton and potentially other clubs. But I want to talk more about the other differential players that we can have, like the differential teams, like the Crystal Palace, Arsenal, for example, as well. It's another interesting team because they keep performing in FPL, but very few people have Arsenal players as well. So if you look away from Man United, Newcastle, Brighton, and Man City, which are like the main teams, and Liverpool, are there any other players that stand out to you? Just looking at this fixture ticker.
EE, also Eberiche Eze. I think Crystal Palace have some decent matches. I mean, if you look at it, it's Bournemouth at home. I'm hoping Crystal Palace win both these games, but Bournemouth at home, Fulham away, fuck Marco Silva, and Nottingham Forest at home as the final game. And, considering everything that they've been doing under Roy Hodgson has been really impressive. I really liked the look of them, generally speaking. And the fact that he's on penalties when Zaha's on the pitch is really, really fun. So I think hunting on one of their assets could be good. I think I like the look of West Ham lately. I think they've been playing really well. It could be potentially Antonio's final season with you guys from the looks of it.
Yeah. And
I'm sure he'll get a really good farewell and we'll be getting a lot of starts and stuff like that. So that's another player to look out for. Obviously, Bowen, Benrahma have been playing really well as well. So I think they're like some fun players. That being said, I think I like the look of, let's have a look here. Everett, nope. Leeds, nope. Southampton, nope. Aston Villa, nope.
I mean, you say Everton, nope, but after watching Dwight McNeil completely destroy Brighton, is there not one part of you that wants to bring him in?
Of course.
Especially for the final 2 fixtures. Since we know Game Week 36, there's going to be benching issues. So just benching him for that game week is fine. But then Wolves away and Bournemouth at home in the final 2 fixtures.
No, 100%. I am 100% looking into getting McNeil, especially if one of the Brighton guys flop. That being said, McNeil is the only person I'd recommend. If Yeremina continues to play, then I'll genuinely say anything's up for grabs because we're so much better with him on the pitch. I would say DCL actually has impressed me quite a lot lately, and he's on penalties. He's been on good form, and scored, assisted, and yeah, he's trying to get his Arsenal edition done correctly. So yeah, I just don't want to jinx Everton when they're fighting for survival and are looking like they can do it. So, but that being said, I did like the look of Ward Prowse against Leicester. I mean, I liked, what both Harvey Barnes and Madison did. But that being said, Leicester have Liverpool. That's not going to go well. Newcastle away. That's not going to go well. And I'm praying to God that West Ham don't royally fuck me over on game week 38. Other than that, I think you could consider. Sounds like a wild thing. Where the hell has Danilo come from in the sense of like, why is he outscoring Richarlison and all this sort of shit? Like, it's annoying me just how good he's been playing lately.
Yeah.
But the matches don't surface in the sense of like it's not worth having him or Brendan Johnson or Morgan Gibbs White, who's looked
Yeah.
really good as well. But you got to play according to the matches, and if you're going to play according to the matches, it's going with the favorites. Obviously, Odegaard has been really, really good. So if you want just a stable guy who's always going to play every week, it's him. He's not going to get benched for the rest of the season or anything like that. While someone like Saka, who has been underwhelming like crazy these last couple of weeks, probably should get rested in one of these game weeks, but probably won't be. They'll play everyone to the ground because they don't have any other tournaments to play for. So, yeah, I'd say Arsenal pick wouldn't be the worst either, but stick with I'd say the top five. Potentially look into West Ham. Potentially, if you want a Dwight McNeil, go for it. I mean, I I think confidence is a huge thing for him because there was this whole talk about, mental health, and he's been very open about all this type of thing. So it's really fun to see him playing great football. And I can't believe he dropped a Ross Barkley by celebrating before shooting the ball into the net and all the type of stuff. It's really fun to see that he's back in good spirits.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that should be a justified list. I don't think Leeds is worth having anyone from because I think they're just going to get battered
Yeah.
every week.
I mean, looking at the expected numbers for Leeds, two red numbers there. Both expected goals and expected goals conceded. They're the worst. So they did get Sam Allardyce, but that didn't really help the expected goal numbers. But they did play Man City away, so you don't really know about Leeds either. But Big Sam,
Yeah.
10 years past his prime, so
Uh,
at least. But yeah, you mentioned a lot of fun differential picks there, but I also want to talk to you about like the main teams, and one especially, and that is Brighton. They have the most fixtures left. They have the best expected goals, but after seeing them against Everton, I mean, second half they were a lot better. Like they should have scored. They should have won the second half at least, but they still managed to lose that one as well. But what do you think about Brighton players? Now March got injured. Still unsure if he's out for a long time or not. Mitoma and McAllister, they did get point returns against Everton, but Mitoma has been kind of bad lately. McAllister hasn't really done that much either, but he was pretty unlucky not to get more points because Pickford did some really nice saves on his headers and stuff. But what do you think is the ideal Brighton triple up at the moment? Because it's kind of I don't know. It's really confusing for me which players to go for because there's rotation now. There's injuries to March and stuff. Their defense goes from getting a lot of points against Wolverhampton and stuff to losing 5-1 against Everton. I think Everton had like 27 goals in 34 matches or something before that match, and then all of a sudden 5 goals against Brighton. So what do you make of Brighton, and which players are the best? Like if you would rank them, like how would you rank the Brighton assets?
I I still think if I were to rank them, I still think like I really like Matoma, so I think I'd still rank Matoma first, even though McAllister has been outscoring him in the last 2 games, obviously getting a goal and getting a very late penalty against Man United justice. But that being said, I still think it's Matoma. I think Matoma was very unlucky, and Brighton. We just met Brighton at the right time. they looked so exhausted playing us. Like just from the first half. I mean, obviously we scored after 58 seconds, but you could just tell they missed a step. The minute they got respite and a break, and the second half, I was just like, oh my god, we're gonna lose this 3-1. Like we're like our 3-2 at that point. And I was just like, oh my god, like this looks like shit. Matoma's now skinning Patterson alive, all this sort of crap. Like, oh, it's not looking good. But I think this sort of match was coming in that regards too. Like I
Yep.
think Brighton have been, the feel good team of the year. I think it's a bit harsh to say, are they the team that's been overperforming a bit? Part of me feels that way as well with certain games that they've had and etc. But then they've gotten super unlucky like they did against Spurs because that Spurs game was complete bullshit. I thought they completely deserved to win at White Hart Lane. But I think I think if I were to boil it down to three, it's still going to be Matoma, McAllister, and Estupinian. I
Yeah.
probably would have said March over Estupinian, but because of the injury, I think Estupinian, he is super good, but he is very much like Marcos Alonso was at Chelsea. He would pop up with goals and, just be like the shit and then be shit for several matches in a row. But I think it was just a mixture of just very good fortune. Our attacking sort of display was just perfect. We countered them very well. Iwobi was playing fantastic. McNeil, obviously, 4 goals contribution in a 5-1 win away at the Amex, which United couldn't even do. And that, comparing, squads and league positioning and everything like that is just unbelievable. But I think Sanchez coming in again, which seems very likely,
Hmm.
I think Brighton will look better. I personally always rated Sanchez over Steele, but De Serbi's like Pep all of a sudden, well, let's play the worst goalkeeper because he fits the team better. What bullshit is that? I'm sorry, but Steele is not better than Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair enough. Also think that might be the best Brighton triple up still. March, notwithstanding now with injury. It's also, he's listed with like a yellow flag March now on FPL. We still haven't gotten like proper news about his health, but it didn't really look that good because he pulled up with a hamstring injury. I think those can linger a bit, and with only 3 game weeks left, I don't really know what to do with March personally as well. He's in my team. At the moment, I think I just got to wait it out and see if he's back fit for Game Week 37, because he has more enticing fixtures in Game Week 37 than he has in Game Week 36. I don't think having Brighton players in Game Week 36 is that important. There's also a huge debate now, I'm going to ask you about that as well, with in regards to Estupinian versus, for example, someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold this game week, or if you want to go with someone like Stones, if he's playing against Everton. Would you play Estupinian with double game weeks against Arsenal and Newcastle away, or would you play someone like Trent against Leicester away?
Personally, because it's a double game weekend, because of what Estupinian is, you would still try to break the luck. But I think if you do have Trent or you do have John Stones who's going to score a bicycle kick against Everton, you would probably pick the other two because it is difficult games. I mean, that's why we're not even considering captaining them in that situation. So, yeah.
Yep. You mentioned captaincy, and that's the next part of the agenda. That is our segment called Make the Case. It's been a pretty long while since we did a Make the Case, actually. There's been issues for one reason or another, but this week it feels natural because there's such a huge, not really a huge debate, but there's some questions about captaincy. This season it's mostly been Haaland every single game week, but now we have a double game week for guys like Isak and Newcastle and Brighton, like we said. But we also have some pretty enticing fixtures for both Salah and Haaland. So in our Make the Case, we have, just to explain the rules, it's been a long while since we did it, so if this is your first time seeing this, this is where we have one pick each. As you can see, Kevin is the first pick this week. Kimo, who's not here, sadly, he had some issues coming up right before the podcast. No worries, it's just some scheduling issues, but he picks number 2 and I pick number 3. So obviously I can't pick Isak. I said yesterday on my weekly wildcard draft that I'm probably going to captain Isak, so just a spoiler. But I'm going to try to make the case for Haaland, even though I might prefer Isak. I'm just going to pretend that I'm not doing that, and I'm going to make the best case possible for Haaland. But since Kevin is first, he got to pick first, he got to pick Isak, and now you're also going to be the first one to make the case for your player. So why is Isak the best captaincy option in Game Week 36, Kevin?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Isak is he's playing Leeds away. Leeds are desperate to win, fair enough, but so is Newcastle. Newcastle need to win to keep their bid of the Champions League alive and, just to go into ending the season in good form and etc. Isak's been really good. He's finally match fit again. He's finally playing the 90 minutes and he looks good. Every time he plays, he looks freaking good. Is it because he's Swedish? Yes. Is it because he's just a naturally gifted and very talented footballer? Yes. It's due to the fact that he spent so much time in La Liga. Yes, because he's been around a lot of technical players and it shows in his play. Some of the assists that he does is better than his actual goals because he's just so gifted in terms of dribbling, understanding the play, and he's so unselfish in terms of what he does on the pitch. So I am very much expecting him over Wilson to take the penalties because he is their star marquee signing. I know he has some sort of seniority in that regards to be taking the set pieces and stuff like that. So he's on penalties. Leeds are shit. I believe they're also playing. Brighton. If I just look it up, yeah, they're playing Brighton at home. They're usually speaking really good at home. I mean, they were able to draw against Man City and all this type of stuff. Yes, they went on to lose against Arsenal, but Arsenal have needed a win like this for a while and all this type of stuff. Like it's sort of like a miscalculation. I personally think Isak's a fun captaincy choice. I'm not going to say it's the best captaincy choice because of the fact that there is fear with Wilson. But that being said, there are so many reasons why he's such a bigger player and better player than Wilson because he's not just a goal machine. He assists as well, which makes him prone to bonus points. He's going to be taking the set pieces as well. And yeah, I think because he's been getting a lot of rest. Yeah. But I think he'll honestly big ball Trippier and be like, yeah, look, man, you're not scoring free kicks for shit. Let me just take one. So I think it'll be penalties and some free kicks as well. Not corners. That's all Trippier. But I think wouldn't surprise me if Isak goes for one of the 20-yard sort of free kicks. But that being said, the only minus is Wilson. But that's a minor minus because they play well together. It's unlucky that against Arsenal, we didn't really get to see that, but when they have been on the pitch together, they've done some crazy things.
Yeah, fair enough. That is a good case for Isak. I think he's, like I said, I think he is an amazing captain's option. And personally, for someone who has had him for a long while this season, we bought him, both of us, when most people went for Watkins. I just feel like I sort of have to go with him as captain personally, but yeah, I'm going to make the case for Haaland soon, but I'm also going to just briefly talk about Salah. That is Kimo's pick, and just to note that as well, it's kind of funny that you picked the Swedish guy. Kimo, who is from Egypt, picked an Egyptian guy, so I felt like it was kind of natural to pick the Norwegian guy, and to be honest, I still think Haaland is probably, for me, I think he is pretty close to Isak, closer than many people would think when it comes to captaincy, because if you look, I'll just do Haaland first before we both talk about Salah, but if you just look at Haaland's numbers, it's crazy. If you double Isak's numbers, it's still not as good as Haaland's numbers. 9 big chances in 4 matches is crazy. He had 3 big chances without scoring against Leeds. He usually scores at least 2 of them. He has missed a lot of big chances this season. I think he has the most big chances missed like in any season ever or something. But it's just the fact that he gets so many chances, and 16 shots in the box, amazing. 7 chances created even. I think he is underrated when it comes to his whole like on the pitch play as well. Like, he's not just a goal scorer. He's obviously a fantastic goal scorer, and he's not as good as, for example, someone like Kane when it comes to the other stuff, but he's underrated in that regard as well. And yeah, he's just been a beast the whole season, and even though he has one single game week, it is against Everton, and I think Everton can concede a lot of goals as well. We've seen that in a couple games, and Man City can score 5 or 6 goals against anyone. Like, they've shown that every single time in the Premier League this season. So I think Holland is a great shout for captaincy, especially considering he's also a big differential now. Like, I think it's going to be like 20-25% of people will probably captain him or something. I think Isak will be more like 60 something percent in terms of at least like engaged FPL managers. So I think it's a nice differential pick with Holland. If you want to chase rank, if you see someone ahead of you in the table who has Isak, then sure, you can go with Holland. If you are one of the ones with Isak and you feel like the other people in your league don't have the funds or don't have a way of getting Isak, obviously you can get Isak as captain as well. But I think Holland is an underrated shout for captaincy, and he's kind of overlooked also because he also blanked against Leeds, and now he also blanked against Real Madrid in the Champions League as well. So people are kind of down on him, but we know Holland, he doesn't really go 3 games in a row without scoring normally. So I think he's a great option still, and obviously everyone has him in their team. But yeah, I think you don't really go wrong with Holland as captain either, even though he has a single game week. Because like you said, Wilson is a factor. We don't know if Isak is going to start both matches. I think personally he will. I think he's going to start the first match up front, and then I think the second match, I think he's going to be on the left with Wilson as the striker, most likely. But yeah, I think Holland is a great shout. So yeah, what do you make of the Holland case I made and Holland as a captaincy shout in general?
I mean, yeah, of course. I think Holland is probably really pissed off about a the plethora of chances that he missed against Leeds. I was so shocked to the point where I'm like, maybe his Leeds heart was bleeding a little bit because he absolutely tore them a new one, um, Ellen Road. So, um, personally, I think it's not the worst shout at all. If anything, it might be even a good auto pick because you know what Holland's about, both home and away. He is a bit worse away, and with Everton, everything that's going on, it's important for them to try and get the win and all this type of stuff. They'll be doing all the dirtiest shit ever to make sure he doesn't score, like they sort of did in the reverse fixture at the Etihad. But I think it's not a bad captaincy choice. I don't think any one of these ones are actually bad captaincy choices. I think even with Salah, he's just in crazy good form. So, but I think one of the things that you didn't highlight, which is frankly a bit offensive, a bit misleading to all of the people here, is the fact that you didn't put a big minus on the fact that he's Norwegian. But that's just me.
It's one of the pluses because the 2 best players in the Premier League this season have been Norwegian, so I figure it's a huge plus. I mean, Isak is great. I love Isak personally. I think he's a top 10 player in the Premier League, but currently the top 2 players in the Premier League this season have been Norwegians. So
one of them is Belgian, and that's Kevin De Bruyne, who's been 1,000% better than Holland. Who cares that he scored a little few goals here and there? But secondly, Odegaard better than KDB. Yeah, that showed in the 2 matches against each other, and the fact that the second best player in the Premier League is Richarlison. So there we are.
Good joke. We all know Mikel Antonio is better than Richarlison as well. So we talked about
extreme
that
bullshit.
earlier today,
Oh my
and
God.
Richarlison has to score 12 goals and 11 assists in the next 30 games to match Antonio's output, which is kind of crazy.
Oh, he probably will.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Maybe if he returns to Everton, potentially.
Yes, exactly.
But anyways, we've talked about Isak and Holland a lot now. We barely touched upon Salah, but is there a case for going with Salah? He plays Leicester away. Historically known, Liverpool have beaten Leicester with a lot of goals previously as well. So Salah was the best captaincy option this past week, but is he a good shout? Is he like a nice differential shout now, do you think? Or do you think he's far behind the other 2, Isak and Holland?
Let me put it this way, okay? In the last 6, he's only blanked once. That's crazy to think about that Salah's been playing that well, considering the fact that we're all chastising him for not having found his rhythm again. So personally, I don't think it's the worst shout to have him. He's obviously well rested because Liverpool can't play European football. He's out of all the FA Cups and all this type of stuff. He only has the Premier League to focus on, and he's clearly taken that into stride because Liverpool have been playing really well. They're chasing for the Champions League spots as well. They couldn't give a shit about Leicester staying in the Prem. So I think Salah isn't a bad shot at all. I think he's just as much of a tasty shout. I mean, that's the reason he was a lot of people's vice captains last week. I don't think it's the worst shout, and I think is a more fun differential captain because of that. Because, like you said, Liverpool, yes, have been bad away, and I think that's the only thing that you can sort of say against them. But Holland has a lot to think about in regards to Champions League and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It could be as easy as like if they take an early lead against us, they might just take Holland out. Like there's no point risking him when the Real Madrid tie isn't even settled. It's 1-1.
Mm.
That's not a certainty that you'll win at the Etihad as well. So personally, I think Salah's a good shout. I think the penalties are there, the goals are there. They want to finish the season strong and get the Champions League. I don't think Salah wants to play in the Europa League, even though that very much is the reality of the current table. And it will require them and a lot of results going their way to make sure that they get into the Champions League. But Leicester have been terrible. I mean, the fact that they lost 5-3 to a Mitrovic-less
Yeah.
Fulham, it says a lot, you
Yeah.
know. Like, it's impressive that they did such a crazy fight back and everything like that, but there's just something that's missing there. And I think Liverpool, who have been in really good form, and Trent Alexander-Arnold has been just unbelievable form, FPL wise as well, just getting like 5 points, 4 points, 7 points, 6 points all the time. So, yeah, I think Salah is a really good shout. If we all had balls, we would captain our respective nations, but obviously there might be one pick that's better simply because of a slight edge that they have, which is the double game week.
Yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. I think all three are decent captaincy options, but I think also it's more fun to just captain a double game week player, and especially Isak as well. He's so fun to watch. Like his assist that wasn't given as an assist in FPL, it's just so amazing. Like a lot of people have noticed Isak this season, and for good reason, because he's such an amazing player. Like I've always said, like even back like 2-3 seasons ago, 3 years ago, I always preferred Isak. I think I like Isak better as a person than Holland as well. I can say that, even though Holland is Norwegian and Isak is Swedish, that plays no part in that. But still, I think Isak is an amazing guy, amazing player, and an amazing captain's option for Game of 36. So yeah, I think you win this one as the first pick, but. You can also let us know, you people watching. You can comment down below. Who do you think is the best captain's option? Who do you think made the best case? Was it Kevin for Isak? Was it me for Holland? Or was it Kimo who wasn't here for Salah? Tell us what you think in the comment section. So that concludes our captaincy discussion, and now we're going to take a look at something else, which is the weekly wildcard draft, which is what I do every game week. I look at what I think is the best Fantasy Premier League squad going forward for the next usually 4 to 5 game weeks, but now there's only 3 game weeks left. So this is what I came up with in my video that I posted yesterday. It's a pretty template team in terms of having triple Brighton, triple Newcastle, triple City, double Man United, and double Liverpool as well. And then one Leicester player and one Spurs goalkeeper as well. But what stands out to you in this team? Is there anything interesting? Actually, let me rephrase that. The one kind of differential pick I have is Riyad Mahrez. So what do you think about his inclusion? He didn't play in the Champions League, so I think that's sort of my thinking. Usually he doesn't play that well in the Premier League because he has the Champions League to think about. And when pretty much every season, when they have the break from the Champions League between like January and March, he plays pretty much all the time in Premier League and becomes a huge asset in FPL. But now it seems like it's reversed, and he doesn't really play in the Champions League, and he plays in the Premier League most likely, I think. So what do you think about Mahrez as a shout going forward, as a sort of differential option for Man City?
Yeah, I mean, I really like the Mars pick, just generally speaking. I mean, we all know what a wonderful player he is, and I think sometimes Pep forgets because he's an idiot at times, or his intellectual power is so bright and crazy that we can't see it. So, but but personally, I think it's just that Riyad Mahrez is too good to be constantly being benched, and I don't think he will get benched like you say. So I think for their league run, he'll get to play, and then I wouldn't surprise me if he gets to start in the uh, reverse Madrid game at the Etihad because they were lacking a little bit on the right wing. Like don't get me wrong, I love Bernardo Silva. I love the fact that he did a roulette or a sedan roulette, as some people call it, or the helicopter, as we say in Swedish. But I think Bernardo Silva just didn't have that killer sort of attacking instinct that Mars has, and I think that's why we'll get to see Mars play in the Premier League, which is the focus that of this whole show. But just in case we want to talk about the Champions League, I think Riyad Mahrez will get to play some minutes there too. Will that affect the rest of the Premier League season? No, I think Riyad Mahrez will get to see the season out, especially considering the fact that he got 2 assists to Gundogan as well. So yeah.
Yeah, next thing I want to touch on a bit and get your thoughts on is the people that I don't have in the squad this time, and that is, as you can see on the left hand side or to my right, if you look at me, you have De Bruyne and Fernandes who were in the squad last week, and then they drop out. Both of them blanked. Fernandes against West Ham, De Bruyne against Leeds. That's partly the reason why, but also because I feel like Salah is, like we said with the captaincy options, he's one of the best players to own, even though he doesn't have a double game week fixture now. And Aston Villa at home, Southampton away, Liverpool have all to play for. They're in fantastic form. That's sort of why I wanted to have Salah. And also, the rest of the midfield as well is pretty good. Like I have Mahrez rather than De Bruyne, and I also have the double Brighton midfielders because they have more fixtures than everyone else. And then Rashford, I guess you might have a problem with him being as high as number 3 pick, but I still think Man United have the best fixtures. He can turn it on in an instance as well, and we know Man United need to win still. Like they are not in the clear in terms of Champions League spots at all. They're playing against Liverpool and Newcastle in terms of getting that Champions League spot. So what do you think about the rest of the team in terms of the prime midfielders? Do you think it's harsh to not include De Bruyne and Fernandes, or do you think Man United are so bad and De Bruyne is focused with Real Madrid, it makes sense to not have them? Or what do you think about them and having Salah and those guys instead?
It's a tough one because I like the look of Fernandez ever since he faked everyone out with his bullshit recovery boot picture. I've liked the look of De Bruyne. I mean, he scored against Real Madrid, and anyone who scores against Real Madrid is a friend. So, um, but that being said, it's just a question of team balance. And I like the fact that that's what you've gone with, and the fact that you wanted some differentials here. Rashford is always going to be in the team because he's cheaper than Fernandes. Morris is obviously going to be in the team because he's cheaper than De Bruyne. Do I think that both could potentially outscore their respective players? I think in regards to Rashford, no. I think Rashford has to basically turn it on now. Now that Martial is injured as well, Weghorst is not going to get that many chances at striker when he can't score. So it means that Rashford will technically have a more advanced role going forward, and therefore I think we'll finally get to see the Rashford that we have been seeing this entire season. In regards to Salah versus De Bruyne, Salah's got less to focus on in regards to he doesn't have an FA Cup match and all this type of stuff. So yeah, it makes sense for you to go like this because De Bruyne could get rested for an FA Cup final. De Bruyne can get rested for this and whatever reasons, and also is very injury prone when when he gets injured. That's a really stupid sentence, but in the sense that De Bruyne is sort of like eggshells. Like you have to sort of be careful with the load management, as they say in the NBA terms. So
yeah,
it makes sense to downgrade these guys into the players that we have here. Personally, though, I think my way of looking at it is having KDB and Rashford, but that's just my sort of way of looking at it.
yeah,
But Mars is a really fun differential, and I think that's why Mars is also notoriously known for being able to score in the final game weeks because that's what he always does, sort of thing. They've
yeah,
won a lot of Premier League titles because of him
yeah,
scoring in the
exactly.
final game weeks.
Exactly. But yeah, I think that concludes the week of our draft discussion as well. I'm pretty happy with the team. The one issue that I have is the benching issue as well, because you have to bench 3 players, and it's not that many benchable players in this team, to be honest. Like, even if you look at this upcoming game week, I probably have to bench Estupinian, Dalot, and probably Mahrez. So that's the thing against Mahrez. Like, he's probably the one to bench, or one of the Brighton midfielders, I guess. But depends on team news as well, and if Mahrez is starting. But that's my only little issue with this team as well. Like, I probably should have thought more about having bench players and just upgraded, like you said, for example, Mahrez to De Bruyne. I could have done that as well. But yeah, that's just how the team ended up being this game week. It's going to be a pretty different team next game week, I think, because it's going to be without the double game week Newcastle players, for example. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see as well. So you can stay put for that video next week. I always do the weekly wildcard draft, and we're going to discuss it on the podcast as well. What we're also going to discuss on the podcast is our future plans, and we're going to start with you, Kevin. This is your current setup, your current team, and personally, I think you're pretty well set up. Like, you do have 2 transfers, so you got to use one just to use it, because otherwise you'll lose it. But I think your team is pretty good. Apart from potentially, that's the thing I haven't listed in the potential moves. Apart from the goalkeepers, like, I'm not sure about Kepa, Chelsea. Probably going to concede. Nottingham Forest have been scoring a lot of goals lately, and then Raya against West Ham, I guess that might be your starting goalkeeper, because they could keep a clean sheet, but like you said, West Ham have been pretty good lately as well. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about your own team as well? What is your most likely move? Do you want to downgrade Watkins to someone, or do you want to take a punt on Wilson, or do you want to do a goalkeeper switch? Like, what feels the most natural to you at the moment?
What feels natural to me is deleting my FPL team for the season I've had. But if we're going to be taking things into consideration, it's a question of whether, do I get rid of the goalkeepers? Yes. That is a huge move that I can do, because the shitty thing is I don't like benching Kevin De Bruyne, because that is the one and only player that I could consider doing it simply if he gets rested against Everton, because a Phil Foden can play in the position. Bernardo Silva can play with Mars on the wing, all this type of stuff. So it's just a question of how they want to handle it. However, KDB is also in good form. Regardless of the fact that he blanked last week, he was obviously one of their best players on the pitch.
Mm-hmm.
He should have had so many assists to Haaland, who was the one who blanked even harder. So for me, in that regard, it's tough, especially if I bring in Wilson and Dallo, then that becomes also who the hell do I bench and all this type of stuff, because I like Dallo's matches over Estupinian, because
but
they're both away games.
You'd have to sell Botman, so you'd have Dalot starting.
Oh yeah, of course. I'd have to. Sorry, never mind. But again, De Bruyne, man. I do like the idea of changing my goalkeepers. Is there a way that I can make Raya into the cheapest motherfucker alive to Alisson, or potentially making Arrizabalaga into De Gea, so I just have a good goalkeeper to end the season with and get, well...
De Gea, a good goalkeeper after what happened against West Ham?
Some would say it was a good shot, so...
yeah, that's Benrahma's mom, that's who.
Oh, Jesus, okay. But yeah, that being said, I still think United have a really nice way to end the sort of season. I mean, we saw that with the fixture ticker and stuff like that. But I want to see if I can get Alisson somehow. I think that is sort of what I want. I want a Liverpool clean sheet. Obviously, I prefer Trent, but to get Trent in would mean that I'd have to give up a lot more. I could get Greenwood in and never play with 3 strikers and live my life, but I think everyone's going to be bringing Wilson in, or everyone's going to bring Isak in, and then you have to sort of counter that, and that's the issue that I have. Because that means I can't fix my goalkeepers. But what's Wilson's price in comparison to Watkins?
I think it's about the same. I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's pretty similar.
That's not great. Is it enough for me to go De Gea and...
I mean, since you have 0.0 in the bank, I think Wilson is slightly cheaper than Watkins, because that means you can afford a lot to his 4.8 compared to Botman's 4.4. So I think using my math skills, I think Wilson is actually 0.4 less than what you'd have to sell Watkins for.
Okay.
Don't know if Watkins has gone up in value for you, but yeah. So it's about 0.3.
Probably gone down in value because he's been shit lately. But yeah, I think those are the best laid out plans. I would love to get Trent, but I think it might be too late.
I mean, that's sort of the first move. If you do Watkins to Greenwood, you could get Trent for next game week. But saying that, Trent doesn't have a double game week next game week, and a lot of other people do. Like you have Man City, for example. You only have 2 City players, so you could look to bring in another City player as well. Like we talked about potentially not having Ederson, but you could get you could sell either Trippier or Botman next week for a Man City defender as well. You can even just sell Trippier for a Man City defender. Just even if you do 2 transfers this game week, you still can afford that, I think. So yeah, those are some things you can consider as well. But personally, for me, if I was in your position, I don't feel like you do have 2 free transfers available, so getting Wilson in without a hit seems kind of interesting. But at the same time, I just think you have the best 5 attacking players possible this game week, to be honest. De Bruyne is amazing, Salah is amazing. And Rashford is usually amazing. He plays against Wolverhampton, who he scored against last time. And then you have a bunch of the best double game week players. You don't have March, you don't have that headache. You have McAllister and Mitoma, who are great, and you have Haaland and Isak. So yeah, potentially you could do what I did in the weekly wildcard draft and do Mahrez rather than De Bruyne, but I think that's also sort of a sideways move now that you already have De Bruyne as compared to if you had a wildcard. But yeah, I think probably I'd just do Watkins to Greenwood and just have 2 transfers for next game week and a lot of money in the bank to get some interesting players in for double game week 37. I think that would be my ideal scenario for you. But yeah. That's just my thoughts on your team. Moving on to Chemo's team. He's not here to talk about his moves, but he mentioned over our group chat that he's most likely going to sell Alvarez after just 1 week in the team and get in Wilson. Chemo doesn't have to sell any Newcastle players to get in Wilson. He has only 2 Newcastle players, and that is Trippier and Isak. So I guess it makes sense to bring in Wilson because Wilson has shown that even though he blanked now against Arsenal, which is not really that surprising because Arsenal are really good, he has shown that he can come off the bench and score. He can start and score. He's been scoring a lot of points lately. So I think Wilson is a great shout, especially if you're in Chemo's position where you don't really have... You have Alvarez, who potentially doesn't play against Everton, and it just makes sense for an easy move from Alvarez to Wilson. But you could also do... you can't really, because you can't force Mahrez in if you do March to Mahrez either. So yeah, I think this is pretty easy for Chemo as well, just Alvarez to Wilson. I think it makes a lot of sense for him. I don't know if you disagree, if you have any other players you think he should bring in instead.
I think that is the simple move. If any news about March comes out, that it's more serious than it is, or a bunch of like out for the season or out for 3 weeks or whatever, then yes, there is the option of getting McAllister in, because we know his Liverpool audition is going really well. So yeah, I think that is another potential move, because I do like the fact that he has Alvarez, who could become a factor when it comes to the tailor end of the season. So, but yeah, it just seems like such an obvious move to get him in. Or if he wants to be ballsy, he could get Joel Linton in and really go differential. But I think Wilson in is a very straightforward move.
Yeah, I think also, like you said, I think that's a good point actually. Going from March to McAllister and just have that for the rest of the season also just saves you a headache going forward, especially like you said, if March is out for a while. And even if both are fit, I feel like McAllister is the better pick. That being said, I think March looked really good against Everton. Apart from the goal that you can see, where he got the hamstring injury, he actually passed the ball away pretty stupidly. But apart from that one instance, I think he looked really good against Everton before the injury. But yeah, I think McAllister is the better pick. So I think that's a decent option as well. Just benching Alvarez for McAllister, bringing McAllister for March, and then benching Alvarez this game. We can potentially have Alvarez in a double game week where Haaland might be exhausted from playing Real Madrid 2 matches in a row. So yeah, I think that's also a great option for Chemo. So yeah, he can ponder that as well. Moving on, we have the manager of the week. we're not going to talk about my team. Like I said, we're going to talk about my team in the team selection video. I'm going to talk about that myself. But now we're going to talk about Nils' team, and this is what he is running with currently. I'm not sure about his captaincy pick. I haven't asked him personally if he's going to captain Isak or if he's going to stick with Salah. But I feel like Isak, if you already have him, just makes a lot of sense just to captain him. We already had that discussion, so don't really need to talk that much about that. But he also has the same thing, but he, with March being injured and not having McAllister, but at the opposite scale of Chemo, who has money in the bank, Nils does not have enough money to do March to McAllister straight up, so you'd have to do a -4 to do that move. So for me, that makes it more palatable to just stay with your team and not do that move. So my preferred transfer for him is just to get back the money that he wasted on Chilwell and get Kivior, who is 4.0 and plays for Arsenal now. Could be a good option. Don't really need to have to play him. Don't even have to play him this game week. Still, he's just like a bench option for 4.0, who might be good eventually. Because I think Saliba's injuries, we're just unsure if he's going to return this season or not. So yeah. Other than that, I think his team is pretty good. Martinelli, I like the differential shout. You saw Everton score 5 goals against Brighton, so who knows what Arsenal can do at home. They scored 4 goals against Brighton last time, so I think Martinelli is actually a really fun differential pick as well this game week, even though he has a single game week. But yeah, Grealish is the other player we didn't really talk that much about in Chemo's team, who's also sort of like an unsure player now. He played 90 minutes against Real Madrid. You'd expect him to play a lot of minutes against Real Madrid in the opposing fixture at the Etihad as well, so could you potentially sell Grealish for someone? Grealish to Mahrez is something you can do straight up, I think. Potentially. He might be, because he has no money in the bank, he might be locked out from that move as well if he has Grealish, if he bought Grealish for a cheaper price. Because I think they're both 7.3, but I don't know. What do you think of the team? Do you think there's... I don't know. What are your thoughts? I don't really have a question for you. What are your thoughts about his future plans?
It's just a question of what he wants to do with Grealish. I think Grealish is probably the most expendable one in his team. Not because Grealish hasn't been playing bad or anything like that. It's just that he is much more limited in comparison to some of these other players that he normally just gets like 7 points or 8 points if he scored, sort of thing. He doesn't get double-digit returns every time he plays, sort of thing, like we expect from some of these other guys. So it's just a question of whether he brings Grealish in for another double game week player or shifts it around a little bit. So, instead of having March, he could just do the straight swap for McAllister and just have that as a move. Potentially then also bringing someone in for Chilwell for -4. But if he's, sitting pretty and doesn't want to do any minuses, personally, it's like you said, suggested with Chilwell Kiwior, or if it's a question of bringing McAllister in for March.
Yeah. Well, like I said, he doesn't have the money to do March McAllister straight up, so he'd have to do a -4. So do you think that's worth it?
Yeah, but it's also just a question of, could he do Grealish to Rashford? I mean, I know he goes against his whole life philosophy and everything like that, but
I think they're kind of the same price as well. So I don't know. He could do that, but seeing as he hasn't had any other player all season, I don't think he's going to do that right now. But yeah. That is certainly an option, but I think that's also something I would have said to him as well if he didn't have this Man United ban apparently. But yeah, it's kind of annoying. Just on that note, it's kind of annoying to be so far behind a player who hasn't had Rashford or Shaw this whole season. Because I know Shaw is one that cost me a lot of points back in the day as well when I didn't bring him in, and Rashford has been so good. Like, it's kind of crazy that people are ahead of me when they haven't had Rashford all season, but. That's just a side note anyways, but yeah.
Another option could be bringing in someone for Watkins, because if we know for sure that Grealish isn't playing or anything like that, it's just potentially bringing another striker in. Question is, which striker does he get, considering the fact that he's tripled up on all the right teams? But, that's where you can have some fun and see if there's someone else out there, because I feel like Watkins has been pretty much on a downwards trajectory. It's a question of maybe going with one of the fun picks that I said, like Eberiche.
He's not a striker in the game though. That's
no, of course, but like Grealish for Eze, and then having that extra money to upgrade either Chilwell or March to someone else.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to strikers, Are there really any picks? We mentioned Antonio, actually. He has a fun pick. But for this game week, in particular, Brentford away, I don't think that's a great shout. Palace don't really have the best fixtures. Marcel, it's a no-go. Newcastle, he can't get Wilson because he already has 3 Newcastle players, like we said. Could get Gabriel Jesus. I don't think he has the money to do that. But Watkins to Jesus, I don't think he can afford that, sadly. But that would also be a kind of a fun pick to do, I guess, if you had the money for that. Other than that, really, Mitrovic is back. Mitrovic against Southampton. Is that a shout? Watkins to Mitrovic.
Yeah, I mean,
they just scored 5 goals, so
he's very much well rested. So
yeah, I mean that's actually kind of a fun differential. It's Southampton, who are already pretty much down.
Yeah,
Mitrovic is fully rested, like you said. Fulham just scored 5 goals. Southampton.
He's also not match fit. I mean, that's the most important thing. I don't know. I think I just don't like Grealish compared to KDB and Mars. But I think
Ivan Toney against West Ham potentially.
Yeah. That could be a pretty decent thing. It's just that Brentford then play Spurs and City. So
yeah, 37 is a game week where you want to bench someone either way. So
yeah. So
he scored against City last time, didn't he? I think he did.
He did. Yeah, he got like 13 points when everyone transferred him out for some players. So
Taiwo Avani straight after has 2 goals against Chelsea now. Former Liverpool as well.
Nah, it is a question of whether he then goes like a complete, I
mean, he could also just. Sorry to just keep interrupting you, but he could also just start Watkins against Spurs at home. Like, we know Spurs are pretty bad.
It's true. It is true. It's just a question of, I think you made the right decision in saying get rid of Chilwell, because Chilwell is just going to lose more and more value as well. So I think it's a good shout. Just get rid of Chilwell and keep an eye out on March. If March is out, then I'd say do both March and Chilwell out to get McAllister and someone else in.
Yeah, fair enough. You can also do, like I said, if he keeps Watkins, you can start Watkins rather than Grealish if he doesn't think Grealish will start, and do the Chilwell move still. Save the transfer on the striker and get the money, because my thinking with the Chilwell to Kiwior move was because he's a Liverpool fan and he probably want to finish with a Liverpool striker. He could pick Firmino, Jota, or Darwin Núñez. He has a lot of picks there, and I think Chilwell to Kiwior, he has exact money, I think, or 0.1 more even, to get Jota, who's the most expensive out of the Liverpool forward. So that was my thinking, really, with the Chilwell to Kiwior move. But yeah, a lot of fun options for Nils as well going forward, and he's going to finish above me in the league, which is pains me to say, but that's most people this year. But next season is going to be different. But also, just to mention this as well, Manager of the Week is the segment we do every week where we highlight the best manager in our league. And as you can see right above me here, you can see our mini league code is 6IYV7U. So if you want to be Manager of the Week, you can join the league and be the best manager of that game week, and you'll be featured on the podcasts, just like Nils just was right now. And that is the end of the podcast, because we've reached the outro section. And this is where I say you can like the video, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, it would be greatly appreciated. You can follow us on Twitter, follow us on Instagram, and join our league, like I just said. And with that said, I'm going to leave it up to Kevin for the last word, like I usually do on this podcast. So Kevin, what is the last word? What is the thing you want people to think about as they leave this podcast?
Fuck Real Madrid.
Same as last week. Fair enough.
Yeah, man, I just hate Real Madrid.
That's fair enough. He is a Barcelona fan after all, so aren't we all? But that's it for us. See ya, and goodbye.